Hello friends, welcome back to Ace Wisdom. Let's start with some raw, unfiltered truth. No sugarcoating, no comforting lies. It's going to sting, but trust me, this is exactly what you need to hear. Because here at Ace Wisdom, we're not here to feed you fantasies or sell you false hope. We're here to wake you up. While everyone else tiptoes around the truth, we deliver it straight. No chaser. So, if you're brave enough to handle it, stick around. If not, you're not just ignoring us, you're ignoring your reality. And let's be clear, this isn't just another self-help script. This is a wake-up call. Remember that moment when your ex went silent, ghosting you without explanation, leaving you with a head full of what-ifs and a heart full of confusion? It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an oversight. It was a clear message. The hardest part, it wasn't about you. It was about them choosing to move on, leaving you gripping the fraying threads of a connection they'd already let go of. Now, here you are, scrolling through countless no-contact strategies, hoping that your silence might spark something in them. Regret, longing, or a sudden epiphany of how much they need you. Stop right there. Let me save you months, maybe years of pain. Silence only works if there's something left in their heart to rekindle. And here's the harshest truth. If they've already decided you don't matter, your absence is just a whisper in the background of their life. Don't believe me? Look to the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius, who said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Your ex's feelings, their choices, they're the outside events. You can't control them, but you can control how you respond. And holding on to hope that they'll miss you when every sign screams they won't, that's not power, it's self-betrayal. Think about the Bible's words in Proverbs 4:23. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Clinging to someone who isn't holding on to you is like throwing your heart into a pit and expecting it to grow. You're feeding an illusion, and it's costing you your peace, your power, and your self-respect. Here's the image I want you to picture. You're gripping a rope with all your might, your hands blistering and bleeding. The other end? It's dangling, untouched, because they've already let go. Every second you hold on, you're pouring your energy into nothingness. Now, imagine releasing it. The pain stops. The tension disappears. That's what it means to let go. Let silence be your shield, not a weapon. Don't use it to manipulate their feelings. Use it to heal your own. True power is in reclaiming your dignity, not in chasing validation from someone who's already shown you where you stand. This journey isn't about making them miss you. It's about finding the part of yourself that you've been neglecting. The version of you that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval to feel whole. As the Stoics taught, true freedom comes when you stop letting others dictate your worth. So, if you're ready to step into your power, say it loud and clear. I'm done. Done waiting. Done hoping for scraps of affection. Done shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's limited version of love. Write it down. Drop it in the comments. Scream it if you have to. Just make it real. Because this isn't the end. This is the beginning. A beginning where you stop fighting for someone who doesn't fight for you and start fighting for yourself. Let's start with the most glaring red flag. They've gone radio silent. No texts, no calls, no subtle likes on your social media posts. Nothing. It's as if you've become invisible to them. And here's the truth. This isn't about them needing space or working through their feelings. This is about indifference, plain and simple. They've checked out emotionally, and that silence you're hearing, it's their way of telling you they're done without saying the words. Now don't fall into the trap of overanalyzing their silence, dissecting every last interaction for hidden meanings. I know it's tempting to think, maybe they're testing me, maybe they're afraid of reaching out first. But let me ask you this, does it really matter? Silence doesn't need a translator. When someone truly cares, they find ways to connect no matter what. Their silence is your answer, even if it's not the one you want to hear. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught, when someone shows you who they are, do not try to transform them into who you wish them to be. Silence speaks louder than words ever could. It tells you where their priorities lie. If they've chosen to cut off communication entirely, it's not because they've lost their phone or forgotten how to text. It's because reaching out to you isn't something they want to do. And trying to force a response, that only pushes you further into the role of someone chasing what's no longer there. The Bible offers a similar perspective in Matthew 7-6. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. In this context, your time, energy, and love are your pearls. Why offer them to someone who has shown, through their silence, that they don't value them? You deserve reciprocity, not rejection disguised as needing space. And here's the hardest pill to swallow. Their silence doesn't mean they're sitting in their room, crying over losing you. It likely means they're carrying on with their life, and the only person stuck in limbo is you. Clinging to the hope that they'll reach out only keeps you trapped in a cycle of anxiety, doubt, and self-inflicted pain. So what do? You stop waiting. You stop staring at your phone, willing it to light up with their name. You stop tying your sense of worth to their ability or inability to communicate. Instead, you reclaim your power. You redirect that energy toward yourself, because the time you spend waiting for someone else to value you is time you could spend rediscovering your own value. Their silence is their loss, not yours. You've seen it. The Instagram stories with their new crew, the sudden influx of selfies, the late-night posts that hint at new romances or nights out. Maybe they've even flaunted a new relationship, complete with cute captions and heart emojis. It feels like a punch in the gut, doesn't it? But here's what you need to understand. Their public moves aren't about you. They're about them. When someone moves on this quickly, it's not because they've magically healed overnight. It's because they've chosen distraction over introspection. They'd rather drown out their feelings with noise, new faces, and fleeting moments than confront the reality of what happened between you two. But their ability to jump into something new so fast isn't a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their inability to sit with discomfort. The Stoics would call this an avoidance of their own inner work. Seneca once wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." They're wasting their time trying to cover emotional wounds with superficial connections. But don't make the mistake of thinking this means they're happy or fulfilled. It's a coping mechanism, not a celebration of their newfound freedom. Still, I know it's hard not to take it personally. Watching someone who once held your heart now parading around like you never existed can feel like a betrayal. But remember this, what they do now isn't about you. It's about them. If they had truly valued what you shared, they wouldn't be so quick to erase its memory. Their actions speak volumes, and their haste to move on is their way of avoiding accountability for what went wrong. The Bible offers this timeless advice in Proverbs 14:13. Even in laughter the heart may ache, and joy may end in grief. What you're seeing may look like joy, but appearances can be deceiving. Their smiles might hide sorrow, their laughter might mask regret. But whether or not that's true isn't your concern. What matters is what you do with this moment. Will you let their public display shatter your self-esteem? Or will you see it for what it truly is? A distraction, not a destiny. Instead of obsessing over their moves, focus on your own. You don't need to post flashy pictures or jump into the dating scene to prove you're okay. True healing doesn't need an audience. Use this time to rebuild, rediscover, and reaffirm your worth. Their quick escape from the past doesn't mean you've been left behind. It means you're taking the higher road, one that leads to genuine growth, not fleeting gratification. You reach out, hoping for clarity, maybe a heart-to-heart, closure, or just an acknowledgement of what you shared. But instead of engaging, they dodge. They keep things surface level, answering with vague one-liners or steering the conversation toward meaningless small talk. If this sounds familiar, it's a sign that they're not emotionally invested in reconnecting. When someone avoids deep conversations, it's because they don't want to reopen the emotional doors they've already closed. They're protecting their own detachment, refusing to engage with anything that might make them reconsider their choice. And here's the truth. If they cared enough to rebuild something with you, they wouldn't shy away from the hard, vulnerable conversations. Avoidance is their way of keeping distance, not just physically but emotionally. The Stoics had a word for this kind of behavior, apatheia, or indifference. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Their refusal to engage deeply is the very sign you need to stop trying. It's not your job to push past their walls or force them to acknowledge feelings they've chosen to suppress. The obstacle here isn't just their lack of effort. It's the reality that their emotional door is firmly shut. But let's be honest. When they keep things shallow, it feels like they're erasing the depth of what you once had. It stings because you still see value in the connection, but their actions suggest otherwise. Let this be a reminder. What you're craving isn't just conversation, it's validation. And you don't need their words to confirm your worth. Their avoidance isn't about you being unworthy, it's about their inability to handle emotional discomfort. The Bible gives us a profound reminder in Ecclesiastes 3:7. There is a time to be silent and a time to speak. Sometimes silence is the answer you need. Their unwillingness to dive deep with you now isn't an invitation to try harder. It's a clear sign that it's time for you to stop speaking and start listening to what their actions are saying. So, what do? You stop seeking validation through their engagement. Instead, focus on the conversations that truly matter, the ones you have with yourself. Ask yourself why you're holding on to someone who avoids the depth you deserve. The energy you're spending trying to pull emotions out of them is energy you could be using to nurture your own emotional well-being. Deep conversations are the foundation of any meaningful connection. If they're not willing to meet you there, don't settle for the shallow end. Walk away, not because you don't care, but because you care too much about yourself to settle for less. You finally hear from them. Maybe it's a text that starts with, "Hey, how are you?" or a casual reply to something you posted. At first, you feel a rush of hope. Maybe this is the start of something again, but as the conversation unfolds, you notice it feels off. They're polite, even friendly, but there's a wall. Their responses lack warmth, depth, or the emotional connection you once shared. This overly polite but distant behavior is a clear sign that they're keeping you at arm's length. They're not interested in rekindling anything meaningful. They're just trying to manage the interaction without diving into feelings or obligations. Politeness, in this case, isn't kindness. It's a boundary cloaked in civility. They're trying to keep things neutral, showing they've moved on while avoiding any emotional messiness. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus would call this a form of emotional detachment, a way of managing their own peace by avoiding entanglements. As he said, make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. For them, keeping interactions polite but distant is about control. They're choosing not to reopen the emotional chapter with you. And here's the kicker. The more you push to get past that polite exterior, the more they'll retreat into emotional unavailability. The Bible also touches on this in Proverbs 27:6. Wounds from a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses. In this case, their politeness is a way of avoiding honesty. They'd rather keep things superficially pleasant than confront the truth about where they stand. And that truth is that they're no longer emotionally invested in you. But here's the thing. This behavior can be incredibly confusing. Their politeness might make you think they care. Why would they reach out at all if they didn't? You might wonder. But that's the trap. Their small gestures aren't signs of affection. They're signs of avoidance. They're trying to maintain a version of peace that keeps their distance intact while avoiding guilt. So, what do? You stop trying to decode their politeness. Take it at face value. It's their way of saying they don't want conflict, but they also don't want connection. Don't mistake their friendliness for a spark of hope. Instead, focus on creating emotional boundaries for yourself. Recognize that you deserve someone who doesn't just engage with you out of politeness, but connects with you out of genuine care. Politeness without emotional investment is like a hollow gift, wrapped nicely but empty inside. Don't waste your time chasing the packaging. If they can't offer depth, let them keep their distance and use that space to build a life where you're surrounded by people who don't just tolerate you, but truly value you. You've noticed it, maybe through social media, mutual friends, or even a brief interaction. They seem lighter, more carefree, even happier. The smiles in their photos seem genuine, their laughter unforced. It's hard to watch because deep down you wonder, was I the problem? Did being with me hold them back? But before you let this thought spiral, let's break it down. First, let's address the harsh truth. If they genuinely seem happier without you, it's not because you were the problem. It's because they've chosen a different path, one they feel aligns better with who they are or where they're going. And that's okay. People outgrow relationships for all kinds of reasons that often have nothing to do with your worth or effort. But their apparent happiness isn't a reason to question your value. It's a reminder that their journey is no longer tied to yours. The Stoics offer clarity here. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Their happiness isn't the problem, it's the way you're interpreting it. Seeing them thrive doesn't diminish your potential for joy. In fact, it should remind you that moving on is possible, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. The Bible also speaks to this kind of situation in Ecclesiastes 3:1. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. Your relationship had its season, and while it's painful to acknowledge that it's past, it's part of a larger story, yours and theirs. Their joy in this new chapter doesn't erase the value of the time you shared. Instead, it shows that life continues, even after loss. But let's not ignore how it feels to see someone you loved thriving without you. It can feel like a betrayal or a rejection, even if that's not their intention. Yet the truth is that their happiness is not your failure. If anything, it's a testament to the fact that life doesn't stop for anyone, and that includes you. Just as they found new sources of joy, so can you, once you stop tying your sense of happiness to theirs. What should you do? Shift your focus inward. Instead of watching their life from the sidelines, step back into your own game. Asking yourself, what brings me joy? What makes me feel lighter, freer, and more alive? You might not have those answers yet, but pursuing them is the key to healing. Their happiness isn't a comparison, it's a signal that moving on is not just possible, but necessary. Their smiles may sting now, but they don't define your future. In time, you'll find your own reasons to smile, authentically, deeply, and without looking back. You deserve a life where your happiness isn't dependent on someone else's presence, but rooted in your own growth and fulfillment. You reach out, maybe just to check in or test the waters, and they respond with something clear and definitive. I think it's better if we don't talk, or I need space to move on. Perhaps they block or unfollow you altogether. It feels abrupt, maybe even harsh. But make no mistake, this is a sign they're drawing a line in the sand. When someone sets firm boundaries, they're not leaving room for reconciliation. Boundaries like this aren't made lightly. They're deliberate and intentional. Whether it's cutting off communication, declining invitations, or removing themselves from your social media, these actions speak volumes. They're not doing it to punish you. They're doing it to protect themselves and move forward. As hard as it is to hear, Stoic wisdom reminds us to respect the choices of others. Epictetus wrote, "Make it your study, then, to think and talk like a man of virtue, who is content to meet only what actually happens and never chafes at that or tries to avoid it." Their boundary setting isn't an attack on you. It's an expression of where they are emotionally, ready to detach and prioritize their own healing. Trying to push past these boundaries will only solidify their resolve and create further distance. The Bible offers a complementary perspective in Matthew 10:14. "If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, leave that home or town and shake the dust off your feet." This isn't about rejection. It's about knowing when it's time to walk away. Their boundaries are a signal that your chapter together has ended, and respecting their space is not only necessary, but a step toward reclaiming your own power. I know what you're thinking, but if they cared, wouldn't they want to stay in my life in some way? That's a common misconception. Love doesn't always end with lingering connections. For many, moving on requires a clean break. And while it hurts to be on the receiving end of this, it's also a gift. A clear signal that it's time to redirect your energy toward yourself. So what should you do? Honor their boundaries and set your own. Don't mistake their distance for malice. See it as clarity. If they've chosen to move forward without you, it's not your job to convince them otherwise. Instead, focus on rebuilding your own boundaries. Protect your heart, nurture your mind, and reclaim your sense of self-worth. Their firm stance doesn't close doors. It opens new ones for you to rediscover who you are without them. Boundaries are not walls, they're invitations to heal. Respect theirs, establish yours, and take this as an opportunity to step into the next chapter of your life with dignity and self-respect. You deserve to grow, and their decision to set boundaries might just be the push you need to finally start. This is the final and often most painful sign. They've erased you from their life, as if you were never a part of it. There are no likes on your posts, no replies to your messages, no mentions of you in conversations. Even in shared spaces, online or in real life, they act as though you're invisible. This isn't indifference anymore. It's complete disengagement. When someone cuts you out this thoroughly, it's a powerful indicator that they've made peace with moving on. They're not just avoiding conflict or setting boundaries. They've chosen a life where you're no longer a factor. This might feel like rejection at its worst, but it's not about you being unworthy. It's about them prioritizing their own emotional clarity. The Stoics remind us to find strength in acceptance. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Their decision to erase you isn't something you can control, and fighting against it only deepens your pain. What you can control is how you respond. Do you continue to reach out, hoping for a reaction, or do you take this as the definitive closure they've given you, even if it wasn't spoken? The Bible, too, offers wisdom in Isaiah 43:18-19. "Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing." Their choice to move forward without you is their way of stepping into a new chapter. It's not your job to hold on to a past they've chosen to leave behind. Instead, it's time for you to do the same. To stop dwelling on what was and start looking toward what can be. Yes, it hurts to feel erased. But ask yourself, would you want to be remembered by someone who isn't willing to hold space for you in their life? Their silence and avoidance aren't invitations to try harder. They're signals that your journey together has ended. It's time to stop seeking acknowledgement from someone who has already turned the page. So what do? You let go, not for them, but for yourself. Stop chasing the validation of someone who has clearly chosen a path that doesn't include you. Focus on your own growth, your own happiness, and your own future. You don't need their acknowledgement to feel complete. Instead, you need to acknowledge yourself, the version of you that's ready to heal, move on, and thrive. Complete disengagement might feel like the end, but it's also a beginning. It's your chance to close this chapter with finality and open a new one where you're the priority. Their decision to stop acknowledging you doesn't define your worth. It defines theirs. And now it's time for you to define your next steps. So there you have it, the raw, unfiltered truth. These 7 signs aren't just clues that your avoidant ex doesn't want you back. They're an invitation to reclaim your power and step into a brighter future. Yes, it's painful to accept that someone you once cared about deeply has chosen a different path. But here's the truth. Their decision doesn't define you. What does define you is how you rise from this. The Stoics would remind you that the only thing within your control is yourself, your thoughts, your actions, and your future. Epictetus said it best. Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. Stop clinging to what's already let go of you. Stop waiting for someone who isn't waiting for you. Instead, use this moment as a wake-up call, a chance to let go of the rope you've been gripping so tightly and start focusing on the only thing that truly matters: you. And if you need a spiritual reminder, lean on the wisdom of Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. This is your moment. Let their actions be the closure you've been searching for, and choose to move forward with grace and courage. You don't need their love, their attention, or their validation to feel whole. You are already enough. If you're ready to take your power back, declare it right now. Drop it in the comments. I'm done. Say it with conviction. Say it for yourself. Because this isn't just about them. It's about you stepping into a version of yourself that thrives without anyone's approval. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. We're here to guide you through this journey, not with comforting lies, but with the hard truths you need to hear. Join the Ace Wisdom community, where we're all about leveling up, reclaiming your worth, and creating a future that's brighter than anything in your past. You've got this. Now let's go build the life you deserve.